Okay, can you guys hear me? All right, yay, excellent, excellent. So I've heard nothing up till now, so I'll assume that Nicole, with the wonderful name, uh, introduced me in a nice way and said nice things, and I am really happy to be here today. I'm sorry I couldn't be there with you in person, but how cool is it that we can do virtual stuff like this? It's kind of like when I was in space and talking to my family. This is the way it went. So it's good that we have these options. Um, I was just going to say, a couple things. We go to space and do really complex things, right? It takes a lot for us to get off the planet and out of gravity and actually to where we can orbit the Earth every 90 minutes, traveling at 17,500 miles an hour, which is about 5 miles a second. So that's pretty fast. And I believe the space shuttle, which I launched on, it took about 7 million pounds of thrust to get us up off the planet and into space, falling around the Earth that way. And then I think you'll all agree that it's pretty complex to live in space on a space station or on another kind of spacecraft, where what we've done is we've really built this mechanical system in space to mimic what Earth does for us naturally, so that we can live up there, we can do the science, we can do the maintenance on the station, we can learn about how our bodies behave in space, and that everything we're doing up there, the science, all of it is about improving life here on Earth. And I think it's kind of cool to consider that for the past 20 years, so in November, it will be 20 years of continuous human presence on the International Space Station. And that is a crew of 6 made up of people that represent 15 different countries from around the world, all working peacefully and successfully together in space. And I'm guessing, I can't see real well, but I'm guessing that there's a lot of you in the audience that for as long as you've been alive, we've had people living and working from all over the planet together peacefully and successfully in space. And those relationships are a complex thing to manage as well. Um, and then getting home safely, landing on the runway like I did, the chirp of the wheels of the space shuttle on the runway. That is all complex, almost kind of mind-boggling stuff that we as human beings have been able to do. But I think what's really cool about it in the end is that we do all this complex stuff. And I came out of that with 3 really simple lessons in mind that I want to share with you. And those lessons, we all learn them when we're really young, but I don't know that they necessarily stick with us throughout our entire lives. And so I'm asking you, if you don't think about these things, kind of pull them back into your mind as you're making decisions and you're doing things throughout the day, because I think it's really important that we all do. And that is that we live on a planet, we are all Earthlings, and the only border that matters is that thin blue line of atmosphere that blankets and protects us all. So like that space station that we've built in space, where we live and we work like a crew that wants to survive, I would ask you to consider that our planet is a spaceship and that we all need to be living and working here like crew on Spaceship Earth. All right, so I think Nicole gave you some general scoop about who I am and what I'm doing. So I'd like to show you a quick 3-4 minute video that has a song that goes along with it, that I think if you listen to the words and watch the scenes in the video, it all matches up really nicely. And it's asking, what kind of world do you want? It'll give it a little bit better view of what goes on in space. But I think that question is the one question that we are asking ourselves when we go and do things like explore space. So check out the video, and then we'll come back and we'll do some questions and answers.
Got a package full of wishes, a time machine, a magic wand, a globe made out of gold. No instructions or commandments, laws of gravity or indecisions to uphold. Printed on the box I see, Acme's build a world to be. Take a chance, grab a piece, help me to believe it. What kind of world do you want? Think anything. Let's start at the start, build a masterpiece. Be careful what you wish for. History starts now. Should there be people or peoples? Money, funny pedestals for fools who never pay. Raise your army, choose your steeple. Don't be shy, the satellites can look the other way. Lose the earthquakes, keep the faults, fill the oceans without the salt. Let every man own his own hand. Can you dig it, baby? What kind of world do you want? Think anything. Let's start at the start, build a masterpiece. Be careful what you wish for. History starts now. Sunlight's on the bridge, sunlight's on the way. Tomorrow's calling. There's more to this than love. What kind of world do you want? What kind of world do you want? What kind of world do you want? Think anything. Let's start at the start, build a masterpiece. Yeah. History starts now. Starts now. Be careful what you wish for. Start now. Now.
Okay. How was that?
They like it.
All right, very good. Yeah, it's one of my favorite videos. It was made a while ago, but I still think it is just such a nice representation of the way we work together up there. Gives you some cool scenes of the kind of work that's going on. And I know I'm a few years older, but maybe you caught a glimpse of me a couple times in there too. But anyway, I'm going to stop rambling and open it up to you guys for questions. That's always the most fun part to me. Anyway, hopefully for you guys too.
She's asking, when did you want to be an astronaut?
When did I want to be an astronaut? Wow. Well, I grew up and I watched the moon landing. That was, wow, that was 50 years ago. And from that point on, I always thought this idea of being an astronaut was really cool. But it took me a long, long time, much later, before I started to think that astronaut was a job that not only other special people got to do. And I was working as an engineer with NASA on the space shuttle program. And I always wanted to know how things fly. And I discovered more about the astronaut job, and finally decided, with the help and encouragement of some people that I considered to be mentors, to fill out the application and apply. And up until that point, I had been interested in it, but I never thought they would ever pick me. But I can tell you, the main thing you have to do when you want to do something is you have to fill out the application. Because you don't get in if you don't do that. And I think without those people that I trusted encouraging me, I might never have done it on my own. And so I would encourage you, if there's something you want to do, there are things you have control over, fill out the application.
And her name's Macy, just so you know.
Macy, yeah.
Young person said, what was it like up there?
What was it like up there? Well, hopefully you could have seen some of it in the video. It was awesome. Let me just tell you, I had very high expectations of what it was going to be like, from talking to other astronauts and, of course, seeing videos like the one you just saw. But I'll tell you, I might have thought it was here. It was like, I can't even reach my arm high enough for how much better it was. And that was everything. That was the work we were doing together. That was the crew I got to be there with. And most especially, it was being able to float and fly like that in microgravity. And then to be able to float or fly up to a window and see Earth out the window. Just so beautiful. And to know that I was up there doing, I think, really good work that's all about improving life down here for everyone. Highly recommend it.
How has being in space expanded your view of Earth? How did that change your feelings about being an Earthling?
Yeah, well, it definitely reinforced the whole idea of Earthling for me, for sure. Like I said before, with those three little yet profound, I guess, simple lessons that really came to mind for me. I don't think in our day-to-day lives we necessarily consider the idea that we're already in space together. I mean, we're all on this planet traveling through space together, that everything that goes on down here, us having this conversation today in some way is having an impact on, the overall scheme of things, the interconnectivity of it all. And I think you come home with that, feeling like you have a responsibility to take care of the things about this planet that help keep us alive and to take care of each other. And honestly, I don't think you have to go to space to get that feeling. I think we can look around ourselves every day and appreciate this planet that we share together in a way that that makes that obvious. But going to space certainly does do that. I mean, I'd ask you to go outside and look up at space too. I think there's a perspective you can get from thinking about your feet like kind of planted on a planet and how you are traveling through space, and you can look at the stars and you can even get an app on your phone that's called Spot the Station and put your zip code in and you can see the space station flying overhead. And you can really, I think, get this sense of where, who and where we are all together in space. And that's a pretty impactful kind of thing to feel. And it's definitely Earthling.
He's thanking you for being here. Thanking you for being a mentor for all these young people. All right, 2 questions. How do you connect your art with your experiences in space? And the second question is, what do you think about the Artemis program?
All right. Well, first of all, thank you back at you. It is a pleasure to be here, even virtually. And it is all, I mean, it's also my pleasure to be engaged in some way with students and people that are thinking about, their path in their own lives. I think I'm blessed to have had the experience I had in space. And I feel like I have a responsibility to be present for young folks who are considering the same kind of thing, or might not know that they should even consider the same thing, and let them know that those opportunities exist. When I retired from NASA, my whole motivation and how I was going to share the experience was to try to do that through my own personal artwork. I do that by painting scenes that I saw of Earth from space, and then trying to engage with audiences that might not even know we have a space station. And, through the artwork too, whether they like my art or not, I might be able to share that backstory of how all the work that's going on up there, and you'll hear me say it over and over again, already have, is about improving life here on Earth, how we learn more about ourselves by doing this. And then that we should be taking care of each other and, the planet that we live on. As part of doing that, I'm very thankful to have been invited into a project where another artist was working with children in a hospital, building art spacesuits. And you can see one of them, a flat version of one of them behind me. And as a result of that, long story short, we've been doing space-themed art therapy projects with kids in hospitals and refugee centers and some very rural schools around the world, and collecting their artwork into global community projects, I guess, and building things like spacesuits and sending some of them to space and getting them back. It's kind of my next mission, I think, is to continue doing that kind of work. And then Artemis, thumbs up. First of all, that we're going back to the moon. I am a firm believer in moon with or without Mars, although I'd like to see the Mars thing happen as well. I think, in the naming of that program, of course, with the idea that women would be included in that program from the very beginning, I think that's significant as well. Although I like to think about it like, we're at a point where our astronaut corps is built up of a very diverse population. I mean, this mix of humanity, and our current NASA astronaut office has roughly 40% women. And when you have that kind of mix, the crew just falls out. There should be at least one or two women stepping on the moon the next time we go back. So very excited about that.
Awesome. They're applauding you.
No.
All right. We have the next question here. Her name is Callie, and she's an aerospace engineering student. Okay, it's a two-question thing. She's an aerospace engineering student, and she wants to know what kind of steps she needs to take to get into the astronaut corps. And then she had another question about contributing back to the arts and what kinds of things she could do, maybe donate to the arts or something. Could she buy art, her art, your art?
Thanks, you guys, for the patience. The questions are getting relayed to me very, very nicely, and so sorry for the delay. But I understand two questions, and that this is Callie, who is an aerospace engineering major. Good choice. That's a good first step. And I like to tell people that when it comes to kind of a path to becoming an astronaut. And I think it's true with any career, really. There are going to be the basic requirements that you have to satisfy no matter what. NASA has those, I think, pretty clearly described in the application package and on their website. So, the education that's required, career experience, and then there's some medical things that go along with that too. But what I love is that I really love that pretty much everybody who becomes an astronaut, they didn't have the same path. They satisfied those requirements, but they were out doing things that they were interested in. They were, whether that was through their education or career, or even the things they like outside of that. Like I look at my class. I was just thinking about it today. In August or in July, it will be 20 years since I was selected to be an astronaut. And um, the mix of people in my class is really, really interesting. Not one of us did get there the same way. And we have oceanographers and geophysicists and, the aeronautical engineers and fighter pilot, test pilot, kind of the stuff you would expect to see degree wise and work wise. But oh my gosh, we have artists and chefs and race car drivers and rock climbers and auto mechanics and house builders and people with all these like really diverse interests outside of the classroom and the workplace that, I don't know, just brings together a mix of people that it would make sense to build a crew from. And you really need to just pay attention to what you enjoy and let that guide the choices you make, after school. And when I say after school, I mean, when you're choosing your career, or jobs, but also, outside of school, and make sure that you understand how the things you've studied at school apply to real life. That's really, really important. And I can tell you in the end, as a person who, later in my career got to sit on the other side of the table to select astronauts, when you get to that point of being selected for an interview, you satisfy all of the criteria. You satisfy the criteria for education and career. But what we want to know is, who are you? And would I want to spend 6 months with you in a relatively confined space, traveling, either around our planet or to another one? And the way you develop those kinds of skills is understanding that it's not all about you. It's about working as a team, understanding how to work as a team, both professionally and with personality. So pay attention to what you enjoy. Opportunities open up that way, and really make sure you understand the criteria that NASA has as the basic criteria. And then in your application, be sure to figure out how to represent who you are when you're answering those questions. I hope that helps. Oh, and then you had another one about the arts. Sorry, I ramble. Can you tell? And you can certainly buy my art. That would be nice. But the Space for Art Foundation, which is the organization we founded to do these space-themed art therapy projects, there are ways to donate to that foundation. But there are also ways. I've worked with some of the students at Embry-Riddle at the local hospitals there. So when we do our next projects, that would be something you could participate in, helping us with the kids at the hospital, following along with the activities we have going on. And then if you see something or know somebody in a country somewhere where we could work with the children there, that would be helpful too. But just getting to know who we are as the Space for Art Foundation, I'd really appreciate that as well. Thanks.
Are there any challenges you face as a woman in the industry?
So I'll start off, the question being, were there any challenges I faced as a woman in the industry? I'll start off by saying one of the lessons I learned maybe early in life, because I don't ever remember thinking about being a boy or a girl or a man or a woman doing the things that I did. But, the rocket ship doesn't care if you're a boy or a girl. And I think if you go in with that kind of attitude, just that you're going to do your best. You are going to, train or study or, behave in a way that that people know you understand that the rocket ship doesn't care. I think the challenges are probably the same one that anybody experiences within the astronaut corps in particular. Is there are things like having to learn another language, and there are things that are physically challenging, like training to do a spacewalk. And, and then there are things like just working with international partners that you might, not necessarily understand their culture, and you figure out ways to do that. But throughout my entire time. And I studied engineering at Embry-Riddle, down the street from me there. And when I think back, that was in the late 80s. And I think that there was 2 other women in the engineering program, or the aeronautical engineering program at that time. And because of the size of the classes, we might not have ever even seen each other. But I felt like I was studying in an environment where there wasn't a consideration for whether you were a man or a woman in those classes. And I was supported every step of the way. So I like to be able to say that I didn't feel like there was a gender-driven challenge out there. And I hope that all of you will experience that same thing. I know that it doesn't always go that way. So my experience is not necessarily what everyone will have, but I think if you go in with the attitude that you are a person studying or working at something that you love and enjoy, and you're going to do your best at it, that's where the best success and opportunity comes from.
What was your experience the first time you're up in the International Space Station feeling zero gravity? What was in your mind? Just your first experiences?
Well, way to go with the aeronautical aerospace engineering. And just a quick back to the other question about the what you can do with the art. Be sure, to go visit the Nicole Stott Art Gallery at the new Student Center. That could be fun. First experience. Wow. I'll tell you, I felt like I had so many first experiences, even when I flew the second time. There's something so special about experiencing that environment that even if it, like on the second time, had a familiarity to it, there's still just something so unique and special about it that it's like your brain almost can't wrap around it. But I remember feeling like, woohoo, that's, I was like thinking that all the time. It's like, how did I get so fortunate to be here? And it's fun. And it's liberating. And it's, imagine in that room where you are right now, if you could just touch, just gently touch the seat you're in, and then you would float all the way up to the ceiling, and you could move with this like gentle, graceful, 3-dimensional, movement throughout the whole place. That's what it was like all the time. And our brains and our bodies figure it out really, really fast. We're all a little bit different in the way we might adapt initially to that microgravity environment or to coming home. And, do we feel good or not when that's happening? But very quickly adapt and learn how to move gracefully and freely around in 3 dimensions. And it's wonderful. Yeah, like I said, highly recommend it. And when I watch my friends doing it now, like I live vicariously through my friends when I see them on NASA TV or the news or something in space, and it just looks so natural. It looks like something I know. And I try to remember how special it is that I even had the opportunity to do that.
Maria, another aerospace engineering student. Okay. What your favorite experiments were on ISS? What kinds of things that you worked on? And your favorite projects? So
kind of favorite experiments and projects up there. Wow. That's like, what was my favorite thing? The whole thing wrapped up in one big favorite thing, I guess. What I think is so neat is that as astronauts now, and it will change over time, but one of the things, first of all, you have to realize if you're wanting to do this job is that regardless of what you studied at school or what you were doing in your job before you become an astronaut, you don't do that job anymore once you are an astronaut. So even if you were, say, a biologist, or you were somebody studying, the latest and greatest techniques in with DNA, or with combustion, or whatever it might be, when you go to space, you're not doing your own experiments. You become like the hands, the eyes, the ears of the scientists on the ground. You are the plumber and the electrician and the maintenance person on the space station. You are the media person, even. You're communicating with schools and other outreach activities on the ground. So you become kind of this jack of all trades, which honestly was one of the things I loved about the job. As a person who likes, to have my hands on the stuff, I really loved that. My favorite science, actually, that's a little difficult too, because I loved it all. I mean, and in some way we are the experiment. So every day you would see somebody maybe wired up with electrodes on their head, measuring if you still had a brain or a heart, or, how your body is responding to the environment. We're kind of the guinea pig there in that environment. And, they wanted every output product we could provide. I mean, once a week you're drawing your own blood and you're spitting in tubes, and, every other output product, they want it frozen and sent to the ground so they can figure out how physiologically your body is responding to this environment and how effectively our countermeasures to that are working. So I thought that was very cool, just to be the experiment. But also, I remember while I was there was at least 100 different kinds of active research investigations going on across pretty much any field of science you can think of. And the ones that stood out to me, and I think it's because visually you could get a sense of what was going on too, were these combustion experiments we were doing. We have this enclosed chamber where every day there's these different mixes of fuels burning, and because you're in this microgravity environment where you can take gravity out of the equation, you see the behavior of things in kind of a pure, different way than you do down here on Earth, so you can understand more about them. So you'd have these flames inside of this chamber burning in like this spherical shape instead of like teardrops like we see down here with the gravity effect on them. And we could learn how to make cleaner, more efficient fuels. There were all kinds of things. I highly recommend, check out, there's a really great website that NASA has with all the science that goes on. And, we're doing those things there to help improve life on Earth. And we're actually monitoring Earth from there as well, with a lot of interesting sensors and experiments that are going on, in addition to using our own eyes with the photography we can do and the Earth observation that we can have from there. Yeah. It's all my favorite.
One more question. One more question after that. All right, she's asking you what your thoughts are on life beyond Earth, what your thoughts are on that, and not just Earthlings, but, aliens somewhere else, from your experiences that you've seen so far.
Yeah. Well, I think just in the grand scheme of the universe that there is every possibility that life exists somewhere else. Maybe won't look, quite like us. And I think that then demands a lot more respect. We tend to think about life like us, and we have to be respectful of any form of life that could be out there. I think we're considering that when we even, travel to Mars or send spacecraft to other planets in our own solar system. We're acknowledging that we have to be respectful. From my own experience in space, I will get asked the question, did I see anything that would make me think that there were aliens around? And the answer is no. I didn't. Maybe they're just, as one of my colleagues says, maybe they're just very, very small. But, and looking back at us already, I don't know. But what I did see were things every day that surprised me in some way. And one of those that really stood out was, we travel around the planet every 90 minutes. So in doing that, about every 45 minutes or so, there's a sunrise or sunset out the window. So half of the time we're going around the Earth, it's over the dark part of Earth, the part that's experiencing nighttime. And I remember floating at the window one night by myself, looking out towards Earth, and it's just stunning. And this shot of light goes, below me, between me and Earth. And it just really startled me because no one had ever told me to expect to see something like that. And I remember, just being kind of shocked by it and in awe of it too. It was beautiful, but pushed off, floated down to the other end of the space station. And I'm, to my colleagues who had been up there a little bit longer than I had at that point, I'm like, what was that? No, it's just like a shooting star that you'd see like looking up, from Earth at night. And so then I float back really quickly, because I don't know about you, but when I'm down here on Earth and I see a shooting star, the next thing I just wait. I want to see another one, and then you usually don't. But so I did the same thing going back. And I remember just floating there thinking like, wow, nothing prepared me for seeing that. It was a total surprise. It was gorgeous. I wanted to see it again. Your brain I had to think about it a little bit, because we are so kind of programmed to seeing those kinds of things, like looking up the other way. So to see it between me and Earth was very different. And then I sat there, or floated there for a minute, and I thought, I'm really glad I saw that, because that means it didn't hit my space station, which means I don't have a hole and I'm not having all these problems. So it's kind of cool how you can look at things very differently, but surprised every time I looked out the window by, something beautiful or new or different that I could appreciate about the planet. And that thought again about us living on a planet, our home is a planet that we share together as Earthlings. And really and truly, the only border that matters is that thin blue line of atmosphere. So I'll leave you guys with that today.
All right, so that's all the time we have for the Q&A. Let's give a big round of applause or wave to Nicole.
Big round of applause.
Thanks, you guys. Have fun.